Hey guys, Brooks here, giving a quick video of a build I just put together that I think has shocked me a little bit. There won't be any pre-roll to this. I'm actually just going to try to quickly get through this one um, to kind of share it out into the world of potentially the strongest barb build I've made, which has nothing to do with any of the barb builds you've probably heard of. Um, so I'm titling this "What Even Is This?" because it's using leap as your primary core damage skill. So instead of using HOTA, which is in the build, but I'll explain why in a second, it's using leap as the primary damage source with HOTA as a secondary damage source for the duration of the build. Now, where this build becomes really interesting is almost every single aspect needed to make this build work is a codex power. So you don't really have to rely on legendary drops to do this. And the damage output of Leap is massive by the aspects and the codex powers that you can get. So let's jump into it. So we're taking Challenging Shout for defenses, so that's an obvious one. Taking Lunging Strike for our basic skill are Fury Generator and for movement. We obviously have Leap for movement as well. We're taking War Cry for a damage amp and Berserking. We'll get to the Berserking part in a second. We're taking HOTA for our to build up the damage factor that is going to be multiplicative on Leap. And then we're taking Kick for both vulnerability, but also because Kick in this is going to reset Leap's cooldown so that we don't have to wait the 13.6 seconds. But not only that, you get 2 charges of this. So theoretically, you could leap, kick, leap again and output an absolute truck ton of damage. Or in the case how the build actually will function, it'll go HOTA, leap, kick, HOTA, leap, kick, etc. On that rotation. So that's going to be kind of how it's going to play out. And I'm going to explain how you're barely going to have to weave in lunging strike, I think, um, into that combination. So let's run through the aspects real fast. So we're taking aspect of Numbing Wrath for Fortified Generation. So we can use this on trash mobs at the start of, let's say, a dungeon, just to get max Fortify as quick as possible. So we can pop Warcry. We can then hit some trash with Lunging Strike and just do that until we're at 100% Fortify, and then we don't have to rely on this too much after that point. We can just try to keep our Fortify up with Warcry from that point forward on cooldown, but obviously, if we needed to stop and get our Fortify back to 100%, this allows us to do so with Lunging Strike. Aspect of Might will allow us 20% damage reduction when we use Launching Strike. That's just a benefit as we're hopping around the map and getting set up to doing our combo. Edge Masters, so while you're at a higher set of resource or your primary resource is near the cap of its resource pool, you'll do more damage. Disobedience is in every build. It's the armor multiplier, so you have more base damage reduction. We're not taking Ghost Walkers because we need the leap cooldown reset. So this says damaging an enemy with kick or ground stop resets leap's cooldown. That's where kick is coming into play. So we have to sacrifice Ghost Walkers. It sucks that we have to sacrifice Ghost Walkers, but leap can be used as a movement skill. It's just not going to be as fast as Ghost Walkers, but it's going to do a whole lot more damage. We're going to take Ancestral Force so that Hammer of the Ancients quakes outwards. This is also a nice damage bonus for Hammer of the Ancients, of course, but the quake outwards is actually the key here. We need to hit as many mobs as possible. Now, you may be thinking, could I do this with Upheaval as well? You absolutely could. I just feel you're going to get this HOTA legendary very early on in Skull's Glen, so it just made functional sense to be in the build. It's going to give you the AoE you need to make the build work, and you get it very, very early on. Expectant, attacking enemies with a basic skill increases the damage of your next core skill by 5-10% up to 30%, also in Skullskin. And that's something to notate. So every single one of these that we just ran through on this left-hand side is a Codex power. So how is our Dry Steps, Skullskin, so you get Edge Masters in Act 2. Kyrgyzstan, you'll get it in Act 5. Dry Steps for Perpetual Stomping. And then the other two that we just went through are Act 2 and Skull's Glint. So you get a lot of this very early on, and they're all Codex powers, so you don't have to rely on any legendary drops to make this functional. So we jump over to the right hand side. Limitless Rage is a staple in every build, so it's obviously here. This is not a Codex power, so this is going to be one of the ones that you do have to look for, but it's not crucial to the build working. So that's really important. This is not a required piece, it's just a nice to have for your amulet. You can use like the barrier aspect or the immunity bubble that you get at the end of Act 1 could fill this slot until you get a Limitless Rage drop. Berserk Fury is probably the best in slot here, even over the shout version of this, because when we get into the skills, we're going to have berserking up for a very long period of time, and potentially longer than our shouts will be up. So this will actually make more sense. However, it's not a codex power. So until you get one of these, and you can optimize out, you can use the shout version, Echoing Fury, which is a staple in most people's builds to generate Fury while your shouts are active, because that one is a Codex power. So you can use this once you get the Kesha stand, and then use this until you get later in the game, and you can grab a Berserk Fury to slot it in, because it will probably be have a higher uptime of generating Fury for you per second. Bold Chieftain's Aspect is the last one that is also not a Codex power. So whenever you cast a Shout skill, its cooldown is reduced by up to 12 seconds. Everybody knows this one. Unfortunately, it's not a Codex power, but it's also not, it doesn't make the build non-functional. So Limitless Rage and Bold Chieftains are the two that you're probably going to have to hunt for. Berserk is just a nice to have over the Shout version of this, but the Shout version is a Codex power, so you can use it for the majority of the time until you find one of these. These are the two that you're going to be hunting. Now we're getting to the key aspect of the build, Veterans Brawler's Aspect. So each time a core skill deals damage to an enemy, your next charge or leap deals 15 to 20% increased damage up to 300%. On a two-hander, that's 40% increased damage up to 600%. So what you essentially are doing here, and this is why we're taking HOTA with the HOTA aspect early on, in Act 2, is we want to AoE as many enemies as possible to get max stacks on Veterans Brawler, and then we're going to leap for 600% damage. This is also a Codex power, so as soon as you get it in Kyrgyzstan, you no longer have to hunt for this. You can just put it on all your weapons going forward as you get newer, better versions of your weapons. Then we're taking Rapid Aspect for basic skills gain attack speed. So again, if and when we need to, get Fortify back or just jump around the map or get Fury back, we can use Lunging Strike a little bit faster. That is also a Codex power. So this is a very, very usable build very early on in the game, pre-end game, pre-level 50, pre-Nightmare Dungeons. A lot of this can just be gotten and then maintained without having to worry about legendary farming. We're also going to take 12% critical damage to vulnerable enemies. You can swap this out for, pretty much anything that you feel comfortable with. You could do basic skill damage early on if you don't have enough crit to justify emeralds. You could do sapphires because we are going to be knocking back and kicking people around and all kinds of crazy stuff. But I just felt the most functional one over time is going to be Emerald, so I put it in the build as Emerald. We're going to take Life for more survivability, and then we're going to take All Res, but again, this one is dynamic. If you've watched my other videos, I explain why this is dynamic. It's just a dynamic slot. We're also going to take Two-Handed Axe Specialization, 15% increased damage to vulnerable enemies, because we are going to be kicking a lot, and that kick is going to make them vulnerable. And then we get 10% increased critical strike chance against vulnerable enemies at rank 10. So just a really, really powerful, probably the best expertise for barbs. All right, let's jump over to skills and talk about how this works. So this is not final. I literally just threw this together and it started making sense, so I wanted to share this. I'm sure some points could be optimized here. But lunging strike, enhanced lunging strike, we're not going to worry about this too much again. We're going to be using this very infrequently, I think. And then HOTA, we're taking 5 out of 5 because we are going to be using the HOTA aspect, and we're going to be using HOTA a lot. There's no reason not to amp the damage of HOTA. It is part of the combination of skills. It's just not the strongest of the skills that we have. Gain 3 Fury for 5 seconds for each enemy damaged by Hammer of the Ancients, stacking up to 10 times. And then Hammer of the Ancients deals 1% additional damage for each point of Fury you have when you used it. Then we're going to grab Pressure Point. So your core skills have up to 30% chance to make enemies vulnerable for 2 seconds. The reason we're taking this is because kick is single target. So you're going to kick an enemy, that enemy is going to become vulnerable, but we do also want all the enemies that we can vulnerable because Leap is going to be an AoE slam attack. So what we're doing here, since Hammer of the Ancients is another reason why we didn't take Upheaval or any of the other options, is because Hammer of the Ancients has a 50% lucky hit chance. So that coupled with the maxed out 30% here means that we're probably going to get quite a few procs of vulnerability on AoE for Hammer of the Ancients so that Leap can get that maximized damage output. Then we're going to take basic skills generate 15% more fury when using a two-handed weapon. We're going to use a two-handed weapon with lunging strike instead of dual wielding, just so we can get our fury back faster when we need to for Hammer of the Ancients. We don't want to be lunging a lot trying to get this back. We just want to lunge once or twice so that we can Hammer the Ancients again if we get low on that resource. We're obviously taking Challenging Sound for damage reduction and maximum life boost. Kick, we're going to take 1 out of 5 with the damage to making enemies vulnerable that you kick. Again, this is a single target kick and vulnerable for 4 seconds. Great for bosses to make bosses vulnerable. We don't need to build down the cooldown here because we really already are getting 2 charges out of this. So while the cooldown is going to suck when it does go on cooldown, for the functional rotation of doing this 3 times in a row, it's fine for now. Potentially another way to optimize this would be getting plus kick on your gear, like plus ranks to kick on your gear, just to bring down the cooldown to make it more fluid as you get later and later into the levels. And then we're going to take Warcry for more damage. We're going to take Warcry for berserking, and then we're going to take Warcry Fortify so that we have a resource for Fortify outside of just the numbing aspect and lunging strike. And this should hopefully maintain our Fortify at 100% as we're going through the game once you get there with lunging strike at the first trash pack. Then we're going to take Shout skills last longer, so we have higher uptime on DR and the damage. We're going to take Shout has specs heal us and our friends if we have any, so we have a heal. Then we're going to max out Leap, of course, so that we do the maximum amount of damage. And then if we miss something, Leap's cooldown goes down by 4, but hopefully we're not missing the enemies we're jumping on. And then if Leap damages at least 1 enemy, gain 40 Fury. This is really crucial. You'll also note that we did not bolster or raise any fury costs because when this hits at least 1 enemy, we're going to be immediately capable of casting another HOTA. So this is why I was saying you should be lunging striking very infrequently because Leap can feed back the fury necessary to do Hammer of the Ancients again. That's why the rotation will be Hammer of the Ancients, into Leap, into Kick, into Hammer of the Ancients, into Leap, into Kick, into Kick, and then again, and on and on and on for as long as you can until Kick goes on cooldown. And that way, you don't have to worry about lunging striking between those rotations. You should be able to get, I think, 3 full rotations of doing that before Kick goes on cooldown, and then you have to wait a second. And then in that time, you can be building back up your Fortify stacks, getting back to max Fury, all that fun stuff during that Kick cooldown until you can get more ranks in Kick. Then we're going to take 9% damage reduction while berserking, so that there's more damage reduction. We're going to take when a brawling skill damages at least 1 enemy, gain berserking for 3 seconds. Well, we're using 2 brawling skills in a consistent rotation. This is why I was saying that Shout aspect may be worse than the Berserking Fury version of it because we're going to have Berserking up for 4 seconds here, and then in that rotation, we're constantly going to be using brawling skills, which is just going to extend berserking for the entire time that we're doing those rotations. So this functionally should give you more than the 6 seconds of Warcry berserk, or I'm sorry, not even 6 seconds, 4 seconds of berserking from Warcry. This will be much longer, making that other aspect, berserking Fury, better than the shout aspect for Fury generation. So we're going to grab that there. While berserking Fury generation is also increased by 18%, and since we're going to be berserking the entire time we're doing this rotation, that 40 Fury is actually going to be amplified when we get more Fury back from it, so that we definitely can squeeze in those HOTAs, as well as potentially over the long term not have to be using Lunging Strike too much to get our Fury back capped off or topped off. Then we're going to come down. We're obviously not going to take any weapon mastery skills. We just don't have room on the bar. And then we're going to come down here. We're not going to take any ultimates because we don't have room on the bar. But we're going to take 1 point in increasing our maximum fury so that we can get to the heal 9% of your maximum life each time you use 100 fury spent. This is just nice as we're going through the motions of the rotations. We should get a fat heal in probably the middle of the, or near the end of the third rotation. So when you do that third HOTA, you should get a 9% heal back. So if you took any damage while you were doing that rotation, you should get a nice heal, as well as the heal from our shouts going off. So it should be fairly reliant on fortify and healing, and then obviously challenging shouts damage reduction should keep you quite alive fairly through most things. So just keep an eye on it, but you have 2 sources of healing and 1 giant source of damage reduction in this build, so it should be pretty strong. I had a spare point, so I ended up deciding to put it here. This is why I said this could maybe be optimized a little bit more. But I put it in your skills using bludgeoning weapons, deal 5% increased damage to enemies that are stunned or vulnerable, since Kick is going to be making enemies vulnerable as we're going through that rotation, and the potential of Hammer of the Ancients making enemies vulnerable during that rotation. This is just a nice 5% bonus to Hammer the Ancients every time it comes up in the rotation cycle. So no reason not to take it, it's just 5% extra damage. And then we're going to take Unconstrained, increase Berserk's maximum duration by 5 seconds, and increase its damage bonus by 25% so that it is doing 50% when it's activated. And since, again, we're going to be basically in Berserking the entire time of those 3 rotations, it's just another 50% modifier for the entire 3 rotation cycle that we're going to do. So that's this build.